Part 4. When things go bad. Why misunderstandings happen? Misunderstandings happen because there's a big drop-off between the sender and the receiver. When you send a message, it goes through a lot of processes and its original meaning gets lost. To make sure there's no misunderstanding, keep in mind how the communication actually works. Let's say a client wants to tell a designer what kind of website they want. A client first writes the message, and right there, during that writing process, the message loses a big chunk of its original meaning. Maybe you can't communicate context, have different interpretation of common terms, or maybe you're not so good with words. Even professional writers struggle with concise and clear communication. The medium, e.g., email or task comment, also takes away some of the message by limiting what can be said and how. Then there's the noise around the medium that downgrades the message's quality. Reading a long email in a noisy office while there are thousands of other unread emails is different than reading the same message on a piece of paper in your private office. Then comes the decoding, when a person interprets what you wrote and distorts the original message further. When the designer reads your email, they have to decode the message using their own field of experience. For example, you may ask for a prototype and the designer may understand comp, so he'll spend a lot of time making pixel-perfect PSDs when all you wanted was a fancier wireframe. Good news is, the more you work together, the more your fields of experience overlap and there's less room for misunderstanding. At the end, the designer gets a different message than the one client had in their head. So, when you communicate, take into the account how you express something, the medium and environment, and the other person's field of experience. There are 4 basic communication patterns: circle, chain, Y, and network. The network pattern is the most efficient and the one you can use only if you keep nexus of activity online. In the network pattern, everyone can communicate directly with everyone else, so there's less room for message distortion. The network pattern saves you from time lags and monkey on the back problems. To have a monkey on your back means being responsible for someone else's problem. This happens most often when someone can't proceed without manager's approval, so they hang off the problem to the manager, thus giving him the monkey. For example, a developer might run into you and say, "Hi there. Great to run into you, because you see, we've got a problem with..." You're in a rush, so you say you'll let them know later. You might wonder what's wrong with that. But let's examine what really happened. Before the two of you met, the developer had a monkey on his back and you were free. Once you parted, the monkey was on your back and the developer was free. Basically, you got stuck with the problem, thus neglecting your own. To make matters worse, people sometimes have no choice but to give away their monkeys to managers due to bureaucratic reasons. The more managers take on their back, the greater the bottleneck they become. This is until they end up with so many problems that they don't have the time to do their job. While the manager sits on a big pile of tasks, others will complain how they can't make up their mind. The solution to the monkey problem is to set clear boundaries from the start and never accept the ownership of the monkey. No time, while helping, will someone's problem become your problem. It means that if someone asks for a consultation, it's their job to leave with the solution. It's like in school. If someone asks you to help them with their math homework, you should help them, but at no point should you touch the pen or do the homework yourself. By taking the pen, you set yourself up for more work down the road, and people know they can take advantage of you. Never have issues on a project. Issues are talked about, problems are solved. How to resolve conflicts within a team. When we say a conflict within the team, we do not mean a superficial quarrel about what should be ordered for lunch. Oh no. By team conflicts, we mean those rooted misunderstandings that are on the way to become apple of discord that will break your team into tiny, impossible to reattached pieces, costing your company money and manpower. Similarly, we are not going to waste a lot of your time on constructive conflicts. Instead, we will focus on prevention and management of destructive conflict, which is whether you like it or not, bound to happen sooner or later within your organization. But before we start, here's a tip. When conflicted parties start attacking the person rather than the problem or their actions, you are most certainly witnessing constructive conflict turning into a destructive one. Conflict management for managers. If done properly, conflict management can put one of the conflicted parties in the position of power, allowing them to attack and withdraw at proper times, thus keeping them in the control of the entire process. However, for managers, the true purpose of conflict management is to find a solution that will prevent conflicts within the team altogether. According to the paper entitled Constructive Conflict by Mary Parker Follett, there are 3 ways managers can handle conflict. Dominance. The manager uses force and position of power to resolve the conflict, usually allowing one side to win. Even though this approach is very effective short-term, it can prove to be highly counterproductive in the long run. Compromise. Finding the middle ground. The manager has all conflicted parties give up on something for the sake of conflict resolution. This approach often leaves many participants unsatisfied, as they had to give up something they considered valuable. Integration. Manager tries to incorporate fundamental desires or interests of all sides into the solution. Even though it sounds great, implementing this approach is a challenging and time-consuming task which can be realized to the fullest only on rare occasions. However, before they choose the way to handle conflict, managers are advised to create a conflict roadmap. Conflict mapping. One of the best conflict maps was conceived and realized by Paul, where a tool that will enable them to find their way through a particular conflict. It may not be the fastest, but it is the most thorough way to handle the conflict within your team. To make the conflict roadmap, you will have to determine the following. Conflict context. Gather information about the history of the conflict and its physical and organizational settings. Note why and where it happened and what the argument actually is about. Involve parties. There are 3 party levels. Primary parties, who oppose one another and have direct stake in the outcome. Secondary parties, allies and sympathizers of primary parties, who have indirect stake in the outcome. And third parties, usually mediators, with no stake in the outcome. Designate which members belong to which party. It will allow you to get an overhead view of alliances and cliques. Causes and consequences. As a conflict emerges, cause and consequence tend to blend. Claims where causes of conflict are different and can vary from hostility, interests, incompatibility to cultural and language differences. Often, one will derive from another. The pair that was fighting over differences of opinion on particular facts now fights out of pure hostility, which took their conflict to the whole new level. Depending on the seriousness of the cause, you should adopt the approach. For example, deep hatred is not handled by domination. Goals and interests. Goals are acknowledged objectives of conflicted parties, while interests are what motivates the parties. By mapping out the conflict, you can help opposing sides distinguish their goals from their true interests. This will enable them to understand each other better and unify all their goals and interests. Dynamics. Fact of the matter is, conflict is constantly moving and changing, usually for the worse. Different conflict dynamics require different approaches. For example, escalated conflict is not handled in the same way as the conflict in early stages. Functions. List all positive consequences of the conflict for all opposing parties. If a manager is aware of all potential positive outcomes and results, they may find alternative ways to produce them. Ultimately, this approach should transform the conflict into cooperative resolution. Regulation potential. How to handle conflict at hand. Should you try to resolve it by yourself, or maybe introduce a mediator? When thinking about the regulation potential, or the way conflict should be handled, focus on limiting factors. There are 2 types of limiting factors: internal, such as the simple wish of the parties to maintain their relationship, and external, such as law or higher authority, that might be introduced. Analyze them and use them to the team's advantage. Once you complete a conflict roadmap, you can use it in a number of ways. Each party can use it on its own to clarify the conflict from their perspective, or everyone can get a glimpse, so both sides can present their view of the conflict. If you choose to relieve your roadmap to a third party, such as a mediator, they could use it to interview the conflict parties, ask them to modify it from their perspectives, and present it as the first step toward resolution. 5 styles of conflict management for participants. When we talk about conflict management, most people first think about Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, or TKI. The research of before-mentioned Kenneth Thomas and his colleague, Ralph Kilmann, in the 1970s helped them identify 5 styles in which different individuals handle conflict. Essentially, each of us has their approach to conflict resolvement. However, using the same method will not resolve all conflicts successfully. The magic formula is to develop a flexible toolkit of techniques and learn to recognize the situation to implement the right one. But what are the 5 different styles Kenneth Thomas has identified? It is best to show it to you by using a simple picture, and then explain it using words, and we will sort it from least recommendable to most recommendable. Avoiding, we both lose. This is probably the worst approach to handling conflict because it all boils down to avoiding it altogether. Individuals that use this approach tend to accept decisions and requests of their supervisors without question and often delegate difficult decisions and tasks if they ever find themselves in the position of power. Essentially, this utterly unassertive and uncooperative approach benefits no one as none of the parties included gets what they want. And even though this passive approach can be useful on rare occasions, try to avoid it. Good if there are a lot of stirred emotions about an insignificant issue. The solution is on the horizon and conflict will inevitably resolve itself. Bad if there is a real danger of the conflict escalating. The issue in question is of major importance for your team. Accommodating, you win, I lose. And while avoidance is a tendency to keep status quo, accommodating relies on satisfying the needs of others at the expense of your own. Individuals who lean toward this approach tend to be either very indulgent or have a high empathy. Accommodating approach can be beneficial in certain situations, but is ultimately regarded as very ineffective. Good if staying on good terms with your teammate is more important than winning. The issue at hand means more to the other party than to yourself. Bad if accommodating the other party will not solve the problem. If the issue is important to you, compromising, nobody wins, nobody loses. By compromising, you don't win, but you get to resolve conflict quickly without losing much. This approach requires both sides to give up something so they can gain something, and usually, nobody is happy with what they get. Similarly to avoiding and accommodating, this approach is precious in certain situations. Good if there is a clash of equal powers, same level managers of 2 different teams. Time is important, but not crucial. Resolving the conflict is more important than winning. Bad if one party has more influence than the other, there are a lot of different needs that need to be satisfied. The situation is extremely urgent, and further quarreling can harm solutions' effectiveness. Competing, I win, you lose. Unlike accommodating, with the competing approach, you take a firm stand on the topic at hand and do your best to force your way. You can do this by either using strong arguments or relying on a position of power to get what you want. Individuals who use this approach are usually influential, stubborn, loud, and with a lot of credibility within the company. They see each conflict as a battle for dominance and can be very aggressive during discussions. Although this technique is excellent when you want your team to make urgent and unpopular decisions, this approach has more than just few downsides. Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king. Tywin Lannister. Good if you need to make urgent decisions. There is a need for making an unpopular decision. You feel that someone is trying to hassle you and take advantage of the situation. Bad if. Decision at question is not urgent. Another party loses much more than you gain. You rely on buying in other members. Collaborating, we both win. Collaborating approach is the pinnacle of conflict handling, being both assertive and cooperative. It requires high emotional intelligence of all participants and willingness to come up with unique win-win solutions. However, this type of solution demands not only time but emotional detachment and rational thinking as well, which is hardly achievable during intense conflicts. Therefore, collaborating is somewhat difficult to realize. Good if the situation is not urgent but requires immediate attention. Decision is important and influences all involved parties heavily. Decision impacts people other than the ones involved in the conflict. All previous conflict resolution attempts failed. Bad if making the decision is urgent. Involved parties do not care about the matter at hand. There are official tests that can help you determine your or your team members' behavior in conflict situations, and it looks something like this. It will give you an insight into the ways you handle conflict and which areas you need to strengthen to become conflict master. Resolving the conflict. The best kind of conflict is a productive one. However, if your team is unable to maintain constructive conflict, preventing confrontation altogether would be the best move to make. By managing conflicts skillfully, you can gain cooperation from team members, improve performance and productivity, reduce stress and preserve the integrity, improve relationships and teamwork, increase staff morale. Overall, it is complicated but highly rewarding skill, which will boost your team's morale and productivity to a whole another level. What are toxic workers? When you're running a business, you must be extra careful with who you hire. You need someone productive, but also someone who gets along with the rest of the team. You can't afford to spend your time fixing human relationship issues with clients and deadlines breathing down your neck. The problem is, avoiding toxic workers is easier said than done, especially when you take into the fact that toxic workers are on average more productive than others. This puts every entrepreneur in a tough position. Should I turn down the person who brings results because they are a terrible fit, or should I hire them and hope their productivity will offset their bad attitude? Well, according to research done by Harvard Business School, you should turn them down as they're gonna cost you more in the long run, $12,500 more, to be exact. Who are toxic workers? Toxic employees are talented and productive people whose behavior is ultimately harmful to an organization. They're difficult to talk to, they gossip, make others feel inferior, aren't welcoming to new team members. It's stressful for other employees to work with them, and others generally feel uneasy in their company because they always have to keep their guard up. They poison the atmosphere and kill collaboration. If they're so bad to work with, why are they hired? And more importantly, how do they stay employed? The answer is very simple. They hit their numbers. If they didn't, it would be easy to fire them. But when they actually bring in the results, it's a different story. According to research, only 1 in 20 workers is fired for toxic behavior. Harvard Business School specifically did a research on toxic workers that encompassed 11 global companies and 58,542 workers. They found that a worker is more likely to be toxic if they're overconfident, self-centered, productive, and rule-following. The research also found that other people, when exposed to toxic workers, are 46% more likely to be fired for misconduct. In other words, toxicity is contagious. When exposed to toxic workers, people are 46% more likely to be fired for misconduct. The trouble with toxic workers. The main reason why toxic employees persist is that they're more productive and more likely to be a superstar, meaning they're in the top 1% in terms of productivity. This is why toxic workers are recruited and remain in company for a long time. According to research, unethical workers enjoy longer tenures. An unethical trader might bring in millions of dollars, so the firm is tempted to Look the other way as long as the trader doesn't overstep legal boundaries. Toxic workers are more productive, but that comes at an expense. They trade work quality for speed. On the flip side, a worker is 27% less likely to be toxic if they do quality work. A company might be tempted to hire a toxic worker in hopes their productivity will offset the downside, but that's not the case. It turns out, avoiding a toxic worker is worth more than hiring a superstar. A superstar only adds $5,300 to the bottom line, while avoiding a toxic worker saves you $12,500 in turnover costs. Jack Welch, a former CEO of General Electric during whose tenure the company's value rose by 4,000%, once classified all workers into 4 types based on 2 attributes, results and values. He advised to keep those who deliver results and share company values 1, fire those who don't 3, and work with those who share values but miss their numbers 2. But type 4 workers, those who deliver results but create toxic environment, are a problem. It's unnatural to fire them because they get the job done. Jack Welch decided to make the tough call and remove them because type 4 workers had the power to destroy the positive culture that's critical to business success. By doing this, he showed that soft values are truly valued and not just empty words written in the company's codex. Be careful though. Jack Welch also said that a workforce consists of 20% of people who are high performers, 10% who you should get rid of, and 70% who do okay. This forced ranking can do a lot of harm because managers focus on workers who are high performers and believe the other 70% are underperformers, which is not true. Companies need to appreciate the competence of the masses and not chase the superpowers of the elite, because when it comes to building a stable business that can grow, it's the people who do okay who are the most important. They are the backbone of every big company because they are both reliable and replaceable. What to do with toxic workers? Bad workers have a stronger effect on the bottom line than good workers. If a worker is a bad fit, they'll be terminated prematurely, and the cost of finding and training a new worker will be high. That's why you need to be extra careful when selecting new hires, and turn them down even if their work is strong. All their expertise won't matter much if your team can't collaborate efficiently and quit their job. The first step to avoiding toxic workers is to prevent hiring toxic workers in the first place. When interviewing new candidates, don't ask solely skill-based questions. Ask questions that can help you gauge if they are a team player. The best way to assess that is by asking questions like, can you recall the last time someone asked you for help? And what did you do? Can you give us an example of a great teamwork at your previous company? What to do if you already have toxic workers? First, you have to identify them. If you're a business owner who doesn't spend too much time in the office, you're most likely oblivious to who makes others miserable because all you see are great results. Current workers won't tell you either because they don't want to badmouth others. The only way to learn the truth is through exit interviews. When someone leaves saying they need to be in a more challenging environment with more professionally minded people who support each other, take that as code word for the work environment is toxic and I can't take it anymore. Getting rid of toxic workers is difficult. You can't just fire them. It's bad for morale, legally risky, and you can't afford to lose productivity. The best course of action is to slowly drive them away by introducing changes to the workplace. You can introduce team buildings, pair programming and code reviews, processes, and other activities that require teamwork and support. Also, bringing in new people can do wonders for the work atmosphere, especially if you bring in a lot of new people. This gives you the chance to mold the right culture. The toxic worker will have to either adjust or decide on their own to leave, turning difficult employees into team players. If you came here looking for our advice on creating team players, you are most likely in the midst of one of 2 given scenarios. Either newly added member of your team displays a certain behavior and has trouble fitting in, or you have taken over someone else's team and realize that there is an individual whose behavior is very destructive for team morale. The best case scenario is to get a new culture fit employee who will start contributing to the system in no time, while the worst case scenario is having to handle a dreaded toxic coworker. However, most of the time you will be faced with difficult employees who just need a little push to become valuable members of the team. 9 types of difficult employees and how to handle them. According to Beth Miller and Andre Lavoie, there are 9 types of difficult employees which can be turned into team players if managed correctly. The victim. The victim is the least accountable individual on the team, who denies any responsibility, claiming that whatever happened is not their fault. Excuses may vary from, "I was given an unclear task," to "It's hot outside and AC was on for a couple of hours only." How to deal with victim. As a manager, it is up to you to define accountability. Provide your team with clear guidelines on what is expected of them as a collective and from each member individually. This approach is the most effective if you put it in writing and on display for everyone to see. By doing this, you are putting the victim outside of their comfort zone. Either they adapt to the obvious rules or become cast out by the rest of the team. The territorial. Often edgy and aggressive, territorials can shake the team foundation, and not in a good way. With the tendency to defend their territory, they will use all the weapons at their disposal to protect their niche from those pesky intruders who dare to come by and ask for an alternative to work they offered. How to deal with territorial. When it comes to the territorial, pay close attention to their attitude. If they care about how their behavior impacts the team performance, then the aggression is probably a defense mechanism of the past which can be removed through careful management and team building. If, on the other hand, they do not care about the team, it is time to remove them from the organization and allow them to focus on individual tasks. It is probably best for everyone. The pessimist. A new project just came in, and it seems it will be a complete package. Challenging, meaningful, fun, and profitable. Spirits are high, and everyone's ready to go. And then you hear the voice in the back. "This is harder than we think. There is no way we can make it happen." It is the same person who regularly ignores silver linings and only stares down into the darkness of the abyss. Apart from killing everyone's buzz, these individuals, known as the pessimists, also tend to strongly resist any change, including new hires, policies, and processes. How to deal with pessimists. Even though dealing with them can be tiring, the pessimist can be very critical to the team dynamics. Why? Because they keep the rest of the team from losing their heads in the clouds. You can organize rare negativity meetings as a reality check in certain situations, or have a weekly one-on-ones with your pessimist, as their input can have crucial clues to what can potentially go wrong. There is one thing to remember, however. These individuals are not suitable for leadership roles. The ever-present, usually invisible during the day and always absent when going, gets tough. You can recognize the ever-present when the rest of the team starts asking, "What do they do here? What is their contribution?" Other clear giveaways are a lot of sick days, frequent coffee breaks outside the office, and detachment from team duties in general. How to deal with ever-present. First thing you need to know is that an individual usually becomes ever-present when they start feeling dissatisfied with their job, duties, their team, or they might have decided it is time for a career change but haven't yet decided to tell you in case things don't work out. So, the first thing you need to do is to talk to them and understand their reasoning. Only when you know their background story should you decide if they are a good fit for your existing team or not. Disclaimer: if a new employee starts acting this way from the get-go, you probably did a poor job during recruitment and hired a slacker. The misfit. Misfits are new employees with the perfect fit resumes who simply failed to adapt to company's culture or the team dynamics. They were supposed to be leaders, but have boiled down to the bare minimum, while others pull their weight. In this case, too, scenarios can occur, and none of them are beneficial. Either the Rest of the team get frustrated with the new colleague for having to pick up the slack, or they follow the new leader's example and start slacking of themselves. How to deal with misfit. This situation is most likely caused by pretenses or misunderstanding during the recruitment process. If the resume and the letters of recommendation check out, then your new employee is most likely unsatisfied with the current duties. Maybe they feel that assigned tasks are below them, or that they cannot utilize their skills to the full potential. To turn the misfit into a team player, have an honest discussion and find out what they consider to be pros and cons of the job. As losing a recruit can be costly, redefine misfit's position so they can fully utilize their strengths. The wise guy. They are smart, they know what they're doing, and they want everyone else to know just how clever they are. While they do their best to achieve the company's goals, they usually tend to be rigid and arrogant towards other team members. How to deal with wise guy. Wise guy are bright, so use that to your advantage. Give them an unusual task to analyze their impact on other team members. Make them note everything down, take positive as well as adverse effects into consideration, and let them draw their own conclusions. Simultaneously, encourage other members to be completely honest, as this will only work if it goes both ways. Finally, make them face the truth of their findings and use it as a wake-up call. If they are brilliant as they claim to be, they will realize how detrimental their attitude is to the team dynamics. The bootlicker. For a bootlicker, keeping the boss happy is more important than work, results, or the rest of the team. Their calculation is simple. Boss will not be too hard on boss's pet. This attitude will, however, cause dissatisfaction among other team members as they feel the bootlicker gets undeserved recognition. Even though this issue sounds trivial, it is your responsibility as a manager to put an end to it. At best, the bootlicker will be excluded from the collective. At worst, the entire team will stop working and start bringing you coffee. How to deal with bootlicker. Introduce peer review system. If the bootlicker, whose strategy was focusing on the happiness of an individual, suddenly finds themselves being judged by many, they will have no other choice but to concentrate on the work at hand. If they are capable, they will soon start contributing to the team. Also, other members will welcome the attitude change. The gossiper. Sometimes beneficial, but mostly destructive. Constant office gossip can create serious tension within the team. Usually, the gossiper is the one that's starting and spreading rumors without thinking about potential consequences. An additional problem arises when the subject of the gossip revolves around employees' personal lives. That is of particular importance in a professional, contemporary world where life-work balance plays a significant role in employees' happiness. How to deal with gossiper. Use the natural curiosity and chattiness of the gossiper to your advantage and redirect their social tendencies. Give them projects that are based around creating interactions, like event planning or company celebration organizations, and watch them become valuable members of the team. Handling these types of projects become win-win situations. It will feed their need to talk about non-business topics while bringing the team together. The narcissist. Narcissists are the exact opposite of the team players and the closest thing you get to toxic coworkers. They do not care about common goals or team results. They do not collaborate. They only care about themselves and their egos. There are clear signs which can help you recognize a narcissist at the workplace. Even though experts took upon themselves to provide us with the tips on how to work with a narcissist, it is highly unlikely that you will be turning one into a full-fledged team player. How to deal with narcissist. If an employee you are supposed to convert turns out to be a narcissist, you will most likely be forced to remove them from the team for the sake of the team. Even though the narcissist is unlikely to change, there is a possibility of change, but only if they deem it beneficial for themselves. The key is to equalize desired change with narcissist success. This is the only way to motivate them to do anything.